What's up everyone? Welcome to the next lesson. Today we have a single lesson that goes from start to finish, covering everything as we go. The gist of it is to go through many things we already know, to train it one last time. We'll show the lighting, we'll show the character curation, we'll show the post-production, but if you're up to learning something new, we got you covered as well. In this lesson we'll use Meshi AI to create a 3D model out of a 2D image, so let's run through it. Okay, so we'll be placing the character in this interior. And we can notice right away that making the character in post would be a struggle. We have a floor that is quite reflective. We can expect certain interactions with other materials like wood, tiles, mirrors, and so on. That's why having a character in the 3D scene will be a great advantage for us. We will immediately get the interaction where it should be. As for the scene itself, it's pretty simple. Let me quickly break it down for you. It is a relatively compact interior with a simple layout. But what's special about it is obviously the plants. They definitely build the composition for us, and without them, the bathroom would essentially make only half sense. We have some 3D buildings and a tree. You can also notice the sun pointing at the wall, not directly into the interior. That already gives away that we will use sky to light up the interior, but you'll see that in a moment. Additionally, we have a light portal in the window. At this moment you might think, Bart, but you told us there is no need for portals. What the hell is this? And the truth be told, doesn't do almost anything. You'll see its effect in a moment. But in case you are wondering, the purpose of it was to control the level of translucency of the plants. Sneaky way to increase how lush the plants will look. Anyway, moving on. We have a few light points inside the chandelier. We also have a few sconces in the form of shells. They don't give much light but create some specular highlights, adding a bit of liveliness to the space. And here a stylistic choice of relight. You'll see what it does in a second. Okay, let's run the interactive. We can take a look at how this interior behaves. I think it looks quite decent out of the box. First, let's take a look at the relight. We'll turn it off and see how it affects the interior. And you can see straight away that relight adds a lot, right? Basically, all the warm tones in the interior came from the relight. It mimics the artificial light from the chandelier. Without it, the entire interior is bathed in a cold light from the sky. We could actually keep it cool and increase the dark areas with curves. It would look natural, but it would be a different scenario. You know, it's quite common here in Poland that we turn the lights on during the day, so that scenario feels familiar. Moving on. Let's take a quick look at the light portal near the window. It looks like something from V-Ray era, but as you can see, it doesn't make a huge difference. This is how the interior looks without it. It's not a big difference, but it does add a bit of a punch to greenery and translucency, so we get a few extra % out of it. Moving on, even if we turn off the sun, we see that the illumination remains practically unchanged. It's mainly the sky and relight that does the heavy lifting here. Here, regarding the frame buffer, we have a LUT that gives a little bit of a punch. We might as well disable it for now and do the same in post-production. But what's interesting is that we don't have aces, we have a filmic this time. Let me turn everything off and show you what would happen if we chose the aces. What would happen if we didn't test different options? As you can see, aces makes every dark color even darker. We could obviously play around with exposure and curves to bring it back, but you can see what we get out of the box using filmic. The difference speaks for itself. Filmic protects the detail in the shadows, and by the way, if we really want to, we could rise the shadows. But with all that said, the curve plays the main role. It essentially adjusts the entire midrange from shadows to lower midtones. And basically, after applying the curve, we get a natural look. Just a friendly reminder here, if you are curious how to adjust tone mapping, how to control interior lighting, check the Mediterranean example. There's 2 lessons which go into the subject in great detail. Beautiful, that's the first part of this breakdown. Next up, we have the process of curating the character in Midjourney. Let me share some nuggets there. We started curation with a simple prompt that you can see here. This is a compilation of a few generations we had at the beginning. And you can see different lighting variants with backlight, overcast and some slight sunlight. They are quite diverse, which was a bit annoying. We tried strong and slight variations, but it wasn't going nowhere, so we started to change the prompts. By the way, at this point we are using the same methods as in our Midjourney series. If you haven't seen it, be sure to look it up. But anyway, we adjusted the prompt by adding above her head, indicating that the cleaning takes place overhead. We have very different iterations here. Sometimes it looks oddly stylized. And even though there were a lot more misses than hits, we finally got it. Unfortunately, one thing that we couldn't escape from was the lighting. It's less than perfect, we have lots of direct sunlight. But we accepted it and decided to fix it in Photoshop. And of course, having selected this variant, we extended the frame to generate additional content at the bottom. Same process as we did earlier. Moving on. We are in Photoshop now. We already removed the background, no mystery there. But I think one aspect worth showing is removing those direct sunbeams. Firefly handles that incredibly well. We can simply start with removing the light on her hand. As you can see, it's trivial at this point. We can also do this for the fabric part. However, sometimes we'll have a situation like with these pants. We could go piece by piece and fill it in, but actually we can also do something different. To generate a 3D model, we don't need to be super precise, so we can do a lazy brushwork to delight those bright spots. We can just pick a gray color and introduce it on a darken blending mode, somewhere around here. We can generally tweak it a bit as well. Obviously, we don't want to completely lose the faults, but just enough to get rid of the biggest highlights. You can use the brushwork, you can use Firefly, it's a fairly straightforward process and at some point we are completely done. We can save it as a cutout and generate a 3D model. Now, finally something new. We'll take a look at the process of generating 3D model in Meshy.ai. It's an alternative to Tripo3D and you should definitely know it. This is the Meshy.ai interface, it offers many features. We can use text to 3D, image to 3D, texturing ready-made objects, text to voxels, lots of different options. We also have the legacy option for older models. But we'll actually use the latest image to 3D model and upload our cleaned up image. And basically, we don't need to do much more here. We can leave everything as default and start the generation. All we need to do is wait for the generation to finish. And boom! We've got 4 variants. We can choose the one that suits us best, and they look quite similar though. Probably the biggest inconsistency is in the area of the hands, between the cloth and the leaf. It is somewhat problematic, but we'll likely replace it with something generated by Midjourney, so that's fine. We can focus on how the character looks below the hands, the positioning of the legs. Let's say we'll go with this one. Next up, we click download and move forward. Next, we can texture it and we can replace the base. And boom, we have a model that has been textured. When it comes to the feet, clothing, etc., it looks quite good. What happens with the hands and partially with the face is definitely less convincing, especially when we start rotating the model. And now, what's cool about Mesh is the ability to redo the process up to 4 times, for free. So, if we are not satisfied with the texturing, we can do another iteration. We can always change our mind and select a different model. We'll wait for one more generation. We can see that the problems are similar. What's happening below is okay, but the face is very dependent on the viewing angle. And now, I would say more deformed than the previous one. Either way, we'll replace it or enhance it in post so we can get around it. We can try again. Here we go. And unfortunately we still have the deformed face, but as I said, we are most concerned with the lower parts and the specific view. So I think this is quite useful. We can move on and create the final model. Set the type of mesh we want, the density, whether it's quad or a triangle mesh. I usually go for the highest resolution because there's really no need to hold back, but even at lower resolutions it should be fine. The detail here is mainly in the texture. Alright, this is our model. It's not perfect, but it's actually more than we need. We can get away with a lot worse actually, so that's fine. One cool thing with Mesh is that we can fix or improve textures if we need. We can also do things like AI texture editing or smart healing. We can select a fragment where the texture should be regenerated based on a prompt. In some cases, this can be useful to fix something that the model clearly has an issue with. However, in a case like this, I don't think anything is that problematic. Additionally, we can also stylize it and create a PBR texture. That's also a cool feature you can experiment with. This will allow us to separate textures into individual albedo, roughness, metallic, normal and height maps, but we'd be careful with it. There could be some errors here. We see that this height map has nothing to do with what's happening in the geometry. Maybe the normal map could work somehow. In our opinion, it's enough to stick with the simple projection we had before. We will always use creative upscalers and those will add additional fidelity and detail. Lastly, we only want the static model. We can go ahead and download it. We can choose the format and resize it. We can actually resize it here by specifying its height. Let's say 1.65 meters for this character. We click download, save the model, and that part is done. Moving on, we step into the last part of this process. We put everything together in Photoshop. It will be relatively simple at this point. This is how the render without the character looks like. No heavy post-production in this one. It's very close to the raw rendering. We just applied a couple of curves to raise the shadows and increase the brightness of the plants selectively. And this is a render with the generated model. It's one of the characters we generated with some older models in Mesh, which was significantly worse at that time. The face has almost no detail, and on the legs there are some fragments of clothing. But even at this stage it was completely sufficient. Next up, we ran this character through Magnific, and as you can see, it fixed all the issues. Our standard settings, creativity at 3, HDR at -1 and most importantly 4x upscale. That's very important. Whenever you want to fix major issues like here, set 4x or 8x upscale and it should be fine. That gives us some detail that's already quite refined. We can recover lots of realistic substances for free. Next, we copied some areas that we had from Midjourney. We simply erased the upper part of the woman and replaced it with what we had from Midjourney. Since it was already on white background, it's easy to cut out. We have the background from the original render, so we can seamlessly replace everything without any loss. And at this point, we are almost there. We make a few more adjustments, like adding a connection with the strelitzia, and we clean up some dirt around the legs. And again, run it through Magnific and make the final adjustments. We fix the eyes where the character is looking. We always do this manually by simply shifting the pupils, which gives the greatest control. It might seem a bit tedious, but it's actually very straightforward. This way we can create a narrative where the character has a specific point of focus. And that's that! I hope you liked this little breakdown. There's lots more to cover, so see you in the next one.